In this special episode of Space Minds, our show is split into two segments from the recent SpaceNews Annual Icon Awards. In our first segment, correspondent Debra Werner speaks with Jason Kim, CEO of Firefly Aerospace. Firefly won the award for commercial space achievement for their Blue Ghost mission 1 to the moon. In our second segment, senior staff writer Jeff Foust moderates a panel of other winners, which includes Casey Dreier, Chief of Space Policy, the Planetary Society, Steve Chien, JPL Fellow, Senior Research Scientist, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Aubrey Dunne, Co-founder and CTO, Ubotica Technologies, and Roger Hunter, Program Manager, NASA Small Spacecraft Technology, NASA Ames Research Center. But first, a word from our sponsor, Voyager Technologies. The future of commercial space is here, a space station designed from day one to support science, national security, commercial R&D, and long-duration human presence without compromise. Led by Voyager Technologies, Starlab will provide a seamless transition from the ISS into the new commercial era.
So, if anybody doesn't know Jason Kim, I'm going to give you in 1 minute what ChatGPT would tell you without hallucinating.
Okay.
After the Air Force Academy, he worked in Air Force Space Superiority and Reconnaissance. He is an electrical engineer and an MBA who has worked at Northrop Grumman, Raytheon. He was the CEO of Millennium Space and is now Firefly CEO for a little over a year. So will you tell us a little bit about the highs and lows of that year, because it's been quite a year.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, we landed on the moon on March 2nd. That's Texas Independence Day. For all the Texans in the room, I mean, that was incredible. I mean, I don't know who can't get excited about the moon. Just think 365 days ago, I had to tell investors why we're going to the moon. Now, no one could shut up about it. So everybody wants to go to the moon, right? Even the next NASA administrator, hopefully he wants to go to the moon over and over again. We're happy to do that for them. And so that was historic. I mean, we took 10 NASA payloads up there, did a bunch of experiments like GPS on the moon, drilled the longest into the actual surface of the moon, took some temperatures, and just goes on and on, 120 gigabytes of data. So, and the last hour that the team let go, it was all autonomous operations and doing hazard navigation and avoiding boulder 1, boulder 2, crater number 3, and then landing 1 meter away from the new target. So it was a bullseye. Whoever said that, Mike Russ, it was a bullseye. So very proud of the team for doing that. A lot of passion in this team, a lot of rehearsals, long nights, sacrifices that they did. So I'm very proud of them. And then I didn't think they could top that, but they did. They got, we went IPO on, 8 August, and it was crazy because it was the biggest space IPO, but it was also one of the top 10 industrials in the history. We were up there with UPS, where we went in one price and then we actually went up 2 more times. So it was pretty historic. Now that we're processing it right now, so those were some great moments. But we go through challenges too in this industry, and anybody that doesn't, I feel sorry for them because they're not learning, they're not getting back up. And that's what makes great companies. A lot of the companies in this room, we get back up. And this team did. We had a combustion event at our Texas site for our stage 1 for Flight 7. And once we found out it wasn't a design problem, it was a process problem, we immediately took action. We implemented corrective measures and even had a 1-day stand down for production, integration, and test. And really took that moment and said, hey, how can we improve in all these different procedures? And we're a better company for that. And so now the path forward is, second stage is already at Vandenberg. We're getting the first stage from the production line pulled forward, and that's getting ready to ship. And then we got to do a wet dress and a hot fire test, and between the end of the year and early first quarter is when we'll be able to launch, and based on range of availability. So I'm confident in the design. I'm confident in our team and their passion to succeed and do it safely and reliably. So that was kind of a challenge that we grew from. And then the crazy thing is we're just getting started. I mean, landing on the moon, launching several times, building an even bigger reusable rocket, and then putting some orbiters up there. We're just getting started.
So what do you see ahead for 2026? It sounds like there will be an alpha launch.
Yeah, several alpha launches is what we're looking forward to. We're going to do a lot of integration and test of our Eclipse rocket because we want to get to that first launch, the inaugural launch. That's a big rocket. I mean, it's 200 feet tall, 15 feet diameter, and we're getting all the flight engines, through all their qualification, and those are going to start getting integrated. So we're really excited about that. I'm very, grateful for the companies ahead of us that have done the reusable launch. It gives us a lot of motivation to do the same thing. So, we're really looking forward to that someday. More lunar lander missions. We're going to go to the far side of the moon. And it's going to be a really sick mission because it's a 22-foot stack, lunar lander. It's got probably a Nobel Prize nominated quality sensor on it that's going to go look into deep space and look for RF signals from the dark ages. But then it's got an orbiter, and that orbiter is going to drop off the lunar lander and a European Space Agency satellite called Lunar Pathfinder. And then it's going to start orbiting and take lunar mapping imaging at very high resolution, and we're going to sell that data commercially. So talk about growing the ecosystem. There's a lot of game-changing things that we're going to do on that Blue Ghost 2 mission.
So a lot coming up. You also recently acquired SciTech. So
Yes.
in our last minute, why did you do that?
Well, I mean, I think we were pretty transparent about our vision. We think that even before all these other CEOs were talking about servers in space, we were thinking that decades ago, right? And so if you think about what space can do for humanity, we think we could process more in space, connect all that data, get it to the user wherever they are, with low latency. And so when you look at something like SciTech, all these servers in space, all these servers on the ground, what good are they without the software? And so SciTech has over 45 years of software applications that they've developed, a whole library of algorithms that they can mix and match like Lego blocks and then apply to things like missile warning, missile tracking. That's what they're doing for the Space Force. Joe Purdy, calls me and says, hey, don't screw it up, right? That's the kind of stuff that they do for a living. It's a $600 million Forge program. It's a no-fill program, and they're using AI to help the user in the room, the operator room, to force multiply themselves to keep us safe at night. That's what SciTech does. But, there's also some synergies, too, because all of our hardware solutions, rockets, reusable rockets, orbiters, and lunar landers, they all need software. So we just acquired a software company that has 500 employees that 40% of them are software developers, and they can help us with our own software as well.
Got it. Great. So thank you so much for talking to us today.
Good evening. First of all, congratulations to all of the winners up here on the stage, all the other winners in the audience. Thanks to the Bloomberg Center for the wonderful venue that's hosting us here tonight. So what we're do here with this panel is give the winners here an opportunity to talk a little bit about their areas of work, dive into a little bit greater detail, and also maybe look at some cross-cutting issues. As we have sort of a bit of an eclectic panel up here, technology and policy, but I think this really combines two of probably the biggest overarching issues or trends in space in 2025. One is the growing adoption of automation and artificial intelligence technologies in space operations to allow spacecraft to do more things on their own without intervention from people on the ground. Whether that is coordinating maneuvers to prevent close approaches, or determining whether and how to collect data, or even how to analyze data. In other words, making spacecraft smarter. The other trend is certainly the policy upheavals that we have seen in the last year with the change of administrations, budget proposals, proposed cancellations, and how the space community, space advocates, people in industry have mobilized to respond to those. You can consider that making policymakers smarter. I'm not sure which is harder, than making the spacecraft smarter or the policymakers smarter. Maybe the panel will help us out here on that. But Casey, we'll start with you. As Mike mentioned in the award description, you've compiled a tremendous amount of data and resources about a lot of these policy issues, and you're a tremendous resource for those of us who are reporting on it. But that information is a means to an end. The end is the advocacy that your organization, the Planetary Society, does, working with other organizations to try and shape policy. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how you're using that resources to reach out to those policymakers and shape the things like the budget negotiations that are ongoing.
Thanks, Jeff, and thank you again for the honor of being here and the other nominees. And of course, I have to acknowledge my colleague, Jack Corral, even though it's an individual achievement. This would not happen without my great colleague, Jack, and my other colleagues at the Society. But yes, I think what the data-driven approach is that, strangely enough, in this business, there's tons of data floating around, so to speak. And the problem, though, is that a lot of this just isn't compiled or presented in a way that is useful, right? It's a fundamental problem. And actually, I'd say, to connect us more broadly, AI has been a helpful way to integrate, categorize, and also just help me code a lot of this stuff. But these new tools mixed with these massive data sets bring this into sudden relevance. And being able to present situations of, this isn't just a normal proposed budget cut. This is extraordinary. It's not just me saying that. I can show you the numbers and actual percentages. That this has never been never been proposed at this degree before, right? That gets people listening. That gets our members in the public listening, and it gets policymakers listening. And I think we've seen that extraordinary response of that. At the end of the day, this isn't a discussion of tweaking the numbers or tweaking the directions. This is a wholesale fundamental change, primarily for the worse, for various types of things that don't have commercial or other systems ready to stand in the way, right? There's no private option for space science, ultimately. And being able to back that up with numbers and to try to appeal to that objectivity and context and historical context, I think has been very powerful. And then also packaging it in a way that people can then use it themselves and to empower others. And so that's really what's driven a lot of our work at the Society.
Yeah. And then how has that been implemented? For example, you had a day of action. You were up on Capitol Hill a couple months ago. What has been the effect of that advocacy in terms of trying to shape the ongoing budget debates? Because again, we don't have a 2026 budget yet, so.
Unfortunately, yes, we still live in this period of limbo. But one thing that was remarkable, I'm pretty confident, and this I don't have numbers, so I'll just have to throw this out here, but I'm pretty confident that day we had nearly 300 people. They all paid for their own way out here, right? These aren't people who are going to get contracts if this happens, right? These are people who are going to be like me, enjoying the pictures that come back from missions to Mars and Europa and maybe further beyond. We had nearly 300 people fly from all over the country to do that, right? That was twice the most people we've ever had through our day of action. Very likely the most people who have ever come to Washington, D.C. to talk about space science in history, right, for an advocacy event. I'm pretty confident about that. And that's extraordinary, right? These are people who, again, don't have, for the most part, personal, professional stakes. They care about this. It means that there's something more resonant and something more profound that, in addition to all these exciting things we've been talking about and developing in the space industry, there's some core aspect of what other activities does the government do that give you access to the sublime, right? Not many, but when you look at a deep image from the Hubble or a Vista on Mars, it's not just the technology and the capability of the workforce, the economy that benefits from it. There's something more profound about us as Americans, and clearly that's resonating, and that's with our partners. We had from Commercial Space Federation to other outreach societies to professional societies. It cross-cut a lot, right? And I think the incredible response we've seen is itself an indicator that this was a misstep. And I think we've seen that through Congress. It's worth just emphasizing, Republican-controlled House and Senate both functionally reject, as you said, vast majorities of this proposal. And so we're seeing the benefit of that now, even though we're still haven't resolved appropriations. we're seeing the application and implementation of some of the worst parts of this cuts being pulled back. We just saw the commitment to ExoMars from NASA, which is a huge step. Osiris Apex to fly by a near-Earth asteroid. Some of these things are getting reprieves or stays of execution or being put back on the block. And that's, I think, very, very positive. So I'm not ready to go say I'm optimistic yet, but I'm less pessimistic than I was 6 months ago.
Less pessimistic. That's
progress.
That sounds like flat is the new up. Steve and Aubrey, we heard this description of dynamic targeting, and it's something when you describe it, it sounds like, well, that's common sense. You look ahead, and if it's cloudy, no, don't take a picture there. If it's clear, take a picture over there. What's sort of the breakthrough that makes that possible through artificial intelligence or other technologies to turn this into a reality?
Yeah, I mean, there was quite a lot of difficulties we had to overcome and quite a lot of challenges we had to address, engineering challenges. I can speak to some of them from our side in Ubotica, and I think Steve can probably chip in as well. Specifically for the dynamic targeting problem, we had to deploy something that had never obviously been, to our knowledge, been deployed before, at least on a small spacecraft like the Cognizant 6 satellite that we deployed on 6U satellite. Timing was really, really key. So we're effectively using a satellite that is designed with an imager that's designed to always fly nadir, looking directly down. And we're using it in a way that wasn't designed. So we're actually instead pitching forward, looking ahead. The sensor is not designed particularly to do this. We had to overcome challenges associated with configuring that sensor into in a manner that allowed us to get the information we needed in the short time that we had. And why is it a short time? Because we're looking ahead. We have somewhere between 60 and 90 seconds after capturing that look-ahead image to process that with the AI algorithms on board in order to determine, in this case, where the cloudy regions are in that image. And that required some pre-processing, applying the AI algorithm, post-processing. We had to do all that in a short number of seconds, and then also pitch the spacecraft back to nadir to point directly down, and then roll to the least cloudy region that we had seen in that look-ahead image. So timing was really, really key here, and it's a great example of how you really need AI to do some of this onboard autonomy, because there's no way we could have done this without directly processing everything on board. Power, like with all small spacecraft, power is really in demand, and it's very low. So we operated this solution on the AI side at about 3 watts. So very, very low power profile. That in itself was a challenge. We had to choose the AI algorithm with Steve and his team to make sure that we could fit it onto the device, the hardware they were targeting, and to make sure that it ran in the appropriate time and that it fitted into the power budget that we had. So they're just some of the kind of maybe low-level engineering challenges that we had. Of course, we're doing something here that, again, to our knowledge, had never been done before. And so we did take some wrong turns, or we tried some things that didn't necessarily work first time. I think it was core or interesting maybe that, at least on our side, the team here that solved this was very, very small. It was probably 4 or 5 engineers. But they were building on top of a much, much larger team, and that was the team that allowed us to have this AI capability on the satellite in the first place, and to be able to leverage this low power, but still pretty clever algorithm to achieve something that really brings extra value to, well, us as a company and scientifically as well, in terms of really what we're trying to do here is maximize the value return on the images that are captured. And this dynamic targeting allows us to do that at least in one way, but it's really, really dependent on this low power, fast and performant AI algorithm. So I think, Steve, you probably want to give a different context maybe, or additional context.
No, I think you hit most of the key elements. One thing I'll point out is that we did some similar things on a spacecraft called Earth Observing 1 almost 20 years ago. We were the first to fly machine learning in space in 2005. And the big difference is that the space world is completely changed. So then we were running on a 3 MIPS processor. So I would say like 1,000 times slower than the processor we have now, and we have AI hardware on board. And that's the difference between responding in an hour or two and tens of seconds. And I think this is what we're increasingly going to be seeing. We will be seeing applications like this where we drive the processing time and the response time even further down to maybe 1 to 3 seconds. And I think every spacecraft is going to have some version of this in the future. And one of the reasons why we were really motivated by this is I was working on the ESA's Rosetta mission to the comet Churyumov-Gerasimenko, and we were very frustrated. We had to plan out these observations 4 to 8 weeks before acquisition, and we didn't know if there were going to be plumes. We didn't know where the plumes would be, if there were going to be plumes. And with this kind of technology, we can fly there, see the plumes, track the plumes, and conduct specific measurements of the plumes as they evolve in the rotation of the comet. And that's a complete game changer from a science perspective.
All right. Roger, we heard a little bit about Starling, what it was intended to do, what it's been evolving to do. What's the mission doing right now? It sounds, we've got this extended mission that's going on, it sounds like for maybe another year or so. What are you doing now with the spacecraft that may be different from what it was earlier in the mission? What have you learned in that process that you're adapting?
Yeah, we've extended all the way to December of 26, and of course the 4 primary experiments on Starling have all been successful. But the extension, because of the results from those primary experiments, is what has driven the extension. We saw that we were just using run-of-the-mill star trackers with this very special software we developed with Stanford. And that software with these star trackers was meant to basically do angles-only optical navigation to allow the swarm to navigate independently of Earth operations. But as we were processing the data from these star trackers, we were seeing these other objects. We were seeing many other spacecraft. We're near the Starlink constellation, so we're detecting and tracking a lot of Starlink spacecraft. We're seeing debris, but we're also seeing Russian spacecraft. We're seeing Chinese spacecraft. We're seeing rocket bodies. And so we're extending that part of the experiment all the way to December 26 because we want to get to the point where you can use a number of those resonant space objects and allow those to be beacons to allow you to operate independently and navigate independently without GPS. And this is where we're headed with the Stanford guys, which have now become Aerodrive. That is one thing we're trying to do with the extension, but there's another thing. We were approached by the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management and asked if we could use the software-defined radios that are on Starling to track very low-watt transmitters on the surface of the Earth. Why? Climate change is having an impact everywhere. They want to track the changes in migratory patterns of all the animals on the surface of the planet. So we're going to use Starling to triangulate these low-watt transmitters on the surface of the planet and get an indication of how those migratory patterns are changing. But out of that, we have now started thinking about an additional experiment. Now we want to use the software-defined radios and the star trackers and see if we can merge the optical measurements we're getting on these other pieces of debris, these other objects in space, with a listening of those RF emanations coming from transmitting spacecraft. So if you're able to emerge the optical measurements with the RF transmissions, you can get a bigger picture of what's going on in low Earth orbit. And we're trying to think about what does the next swarm look like. So all the successes with Starling have already started us scratching our heads. What is the next generation swarm going to look like afterwards? So that's what we're doing between now and the end of calendar year 26.
Yeah. So what might that next generation look like? What sort of attributes might it have? What sort of applications might it have, either in Earth orbit or even beyond?
We want to go to cislunar space and then planetary space. I want to put a swarm at the moon. We're not the only ones going to the moon. There's commercial companies going to the moon. India is going to the moon. China is going to the moon. Everywhere we go, we take our infrastructure with us. We want to establish with a swarm the capability to deploy rapidly a position, navigation, timing, comm, and space situational awareness capability at the moon. And those are fundamental things we've learned from Starling. So we've started a study already with a team that's been working on Starling on what does that next generation swarm look like, and we've got some good ideas already.
Awesome. Casey, I want to sort of tap your expertise here in policy and maybe just sort of give the audience a little bit of an update, sort of the state of play of where we are in the budget process as of about 6 o'clock on December 2nd. It might change by 7 o'clock. You never know. Just sort of where things stand, because we were sort of in hibernation there during the shutdown for a while. Didn't look like much was happening. We're out of the shutdown. Now we're waiting to see what's happening. Sort of where do things stand right now?
Well, my disclaimer would be I haven't checked the news in an hour, so it could be as of 5 or so p.m. I mean, I think a lot of the pieces are in place. and it's just getting over to the finish line here. We are seemingly, that finish line has extended now beyond Christmas. So we are in a continuing resolution for NASA. We are in a situation where we have a House appropriations and a Senate appropriations. The top lines are the same, but they allocate money differently. House provides less for science, still way better than the cut proposed by the White House, but less. Senate keeps it basically the same. And that money, I think that difference is kind of remaining to be worked out. We haven't conferenced the difference yet. Obviously, we had Isaacman's second hearing tomorrow, and now they seem to have a vote queued up, at least in the Commerce Committee, on the 8th. Those are moving independently, but it looks like we're running out of time to get appropriations before Christmas. So my guess is that we're going to be right down to the wire again in January, but I think the clear response now that we've had House and Senate budgets passed through the committees, right, just kind of waiting for their floor votes, should that ever get to that point, or conference, has given a very clear, again, response from the White House's own party here that this level of kind of decimation cuts to science is not going to fly and was not seen as a smart strategic move, right? To kind of single-handedly cede U.S. leadership in the solar system, not the smartest move when you're in a geopolitical competition. And so we seem to be, at least in the CR, spending at a level equivalent roughly to the House budget. And that has given, again, the operations of most of these science missions seem to be continuing. We have sporadic uncertainties kind of around that. And again, it's just very hard for a lot of missions to plan much beyond January. But we're in this period where at least they're continuing. Once you turn off one of these spacecraft, they don't come back, right? You're talking to something past Pluto. We turn off our mission, that went past Pluto, that's deeper into the solar system, takes 20 years to get there. You lose that for a day, you're not finding it again, right? It's not even designed to be shut off. And so we're keeping those going. That's been really important. So I think, again, we have really solid foundation. We seem to have a lot of support. And I think this is an amazing thing. In a bipartisan way, is that even a word anymore? And we have a situation where it's just really ironing out these differences. And NASA's not what's holding up this budget, right? Mm-hmm. The NASA's the easy part. That's the happy part. That's the part that they get to make kind of happy statements on. Everyone likes it. There's thankfully no anti-space science movement out there. Maybe Russ Vought would be that one person, but everyone else seems to be very much for this. And so again, it's getting stuck in this larger context, which is always NASA's problem. So again, less pessimistic than I've been. And I think, again, a lot of the pieces are in the right place, and hopefully they'll sneak by. Maybe we'll have a Christmas miracle, and we'll have a CJS appropriations move through in a minibus or something that'll surprise us all. Again, I haven't checked the news in an hour, so maybe it could have changed before then.
Miracle on Pennsylvania Avenue coming soon on Hallmark. Steve and Aubrey, you've talked about what you've done with dynamic targeting here. We've heard about some of the other potential applications. Sort of what is next in terms of taking this technology and applying it either for commercial missions or for Earth science missions or other applications for that matter?
So there's two answers. So first of all, there's quite a bit of commercial interest in this the primary application of dynamic targeting, which is avoiding clouds. Because every time a commercial imaging company takes an image of a cloudy scene, they don't get paid. The industry standard is they keep acquiring it until they get a cloud-free scene. So there's a lot of interest in the commercial world for that. And what's the next thing? We literally just started about 4 months ago an effort called FAME, where we're deploying this same kind of technology and other AI technologies to, our target is 60 spacecraft in 3 years. We will be on 8 spacecraft by the end of spring 26, and on 20 spacecraft by about 6 months after that. And so we're very excited to see this pushed out en masse at scale.
All right.
Yeah, and delighted to be part of that very interesting FAME initiative, and looking forward to some hopefully pretty cool results over the next 2 to 3 years. From our perspective, we also have to obviously take a commercial perspective on where we go with this, and where we see a lot of value is in this proactive operations. So basically, where we are seeking something, a bit like Steve mentioned with the volcanoes, but we're seeking some features or objects that are interesting. And so it's almost like we're sending the satellites out as agents and saying, here are 3 or 4 different objects or features that we really want to know about. And when you don't see those, we don't actually want any data. What we really care about is when you see something of interest, we want to know as quickly as possible. And so a good example of that, and something that we're quite focused on at the moment, is in maritime situational awareness, where we're looking for effectively vessels that are maybe have certain characteristics, size, speed, or based on their location, where we can effectively deploy multiple AI algorithms directly on the satellite. And a bit like the dynamic targeting, we're looking ahead and seeking to see where those vessels of interest may be. If we don't see them, we just keep searching, we just keep looking. And we only interrupt that flow, if you like, when we see a vessel or a feature of interest. And then this feeds back into many of the applications that actually FAME will hopefully demonstrate. It's tip and cue. And it's being reactive about what is of most value to return back to ground and to Earth. And it's this difference, I suppose, between data and information or knowledge, depending on where you sit on this spectrum. And so for us, the maritime situational awareness is a really interesting use case. Also, in Europe at the moment, it's very needed, we think, because we have a lot of very large spaces out in the seas and oceans that we are probably not managing very well at the moment. And so it's a good, tangible example of where some of this dynamic targeting follow-up is going to go for us anyway. That's the way we see it.
All right, great. We're down to our last minute. As much as I might like the clock to do a last minute hold, I don't think it's going to do that. So I want to briefly ask each of the panelists, and I'll start with you, Roger, and work our way back. What you're most looking forward to in the next year, either in your own particular project or some other space-related projects you're aware of and familiar with. What are you most looking forward to the next year?
There's a couple of things. If you're at Wallops Island on December 17th, we're launching something that no one's ever seen before. We've worked with the Aerospace Corporation and the Space Force on this, and it's called DiskSat. They're a flat spacecraft, about 1 meter across, is circular, 2.5 centimeters thick. I can't wait to put these out there because UFO nuts are going crazy. Because it's like a flying Frisbee. That's one thing. And we're disrupting the CubeSat platform again. The second thing is another swarm we've been working on, and I want to talk to the Space Force about this. I know they're interested in it, and it's called Pi-12. And it's another swarm of 12 spacecraft. And for the first time, we're going to put neuromorphic processors on these spacecraft. We want to improve the capability of these spacecraft to operate even more independently and also react to changes in the space environment and allow the spacecraft to do their own early orbit checkout, their own anomaly resolution, and their own reconfiguration within the swarm. So those are the things that are on my horizon that I'm really excited about.
All right, Aubrey, real quick.
Yeah, real quick. I think AI-driven tip and cue and the FAME project that Steve is leading, the world's largest federated AI experiment in space. So really looking forward to that.
I would just say people keep watching the news on AI in space. I think in the next 6 months to a year, you're going to see unbelievable things you wouldn't have imagined going from ground to space, and they're not things necessarily that we're the only people working on. There's a lot of people working on them, and you're going to see them coming out in the press.
I hope to see much more sanity in terms of policy, maybe a coherent policy. I think we're making the right. It's just a joke. But I just actually want to build. I mean, there's some truly exciting applications of AI to policy and to a lot of this data that I'm really excited to have the time to spend more of my daily work on, because as opposed to putting out fires, to really developing some exciting stuff. So there's some really exciting. I think leveraging these new tools in this area is really underdeveloped. And I'm very excited to work on that.
Great. I think that illustrates that these what seems like distinct areas of AI and automation and policy actually do overlap and combine with each other. So please give the panelists a round of applause.